Alright, man. I found it. Y'all do y'all thing and tell me.
Alright, bro, so the best place that you can start... Well, first of all, don't listen to any of these Christians telling you how to read the Bible or where you should read or, don't listen to anything that they say. Because the Messiah in Matthew 24 tells you that in the last generation that we are living in, which is even the reason why you've picked up the Bible, that's God's conviction, trying to wake you up before the end, which is real close now. He says in Matthew 24 that in the last generation, the whole world is going to be deceived, apart from the very elect. Okay? So that means the whole Christian church is deceived, because the Christian church aren't the very elect. Because the very elect, they are defined in Revelation 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yeshua. The Christians do not do either of those, because the commandments of God is the 10 Commandments. The Christian church teach you that we are no longer required to keep the 10 Commandments for salvation. And the faith of Yeshua means that they're going to be fulfilling the royal law, which is what James 2:8 calls loving your neighbor as yourself, which is defined in Leviticus 19. And it means to rebuke sin. Christians don't do that. In fact, they tell you that you shouldn't judge anyone. You should just love them. Judgment is love. That's just a pretty quick and easy way to show you how deceived the church is. Okay? Now, if I was going to tell you where to start in the Bible, I would, and this should be so clear as day, like such an obvious shout, but you need to know the prophecies of the Messiah, so that when you read of the Messiah, you can recognize, yep, this guy is fulfilling the prophecies of the Messiah. Okay? So the main and most important prophecies of the Messiah is Deuteronomy 18, verses 15 through to 18. And that tells you that the Messiah was going to come and teach everything that Israel desired at Horeb. Okay? Now the next place you want to read is Deuteronomy 5. And that tells you what Israel desired at Horeb. It was the 10 Commandments. God wrote the 10 Commandments upon 2 tables of stone. This was the covenant between God and his people. And if the people kept that covenant, they would be his people and he would be their God. He wrote them upon 2 tables of stone and he added no more. So any Christian that is going to listen to this video and say, well, what about the other 600 plus laws? Yeah, that's not part of the Holy Covenant. Yeshua came to teach the Holy Covenant, the 10 Commandments, and no more. Okay? So this whole process of him ending the sacrificial law, which is those other 600 plus laws, and just focusing on the 10 Commandments, is called the refreshing of the covenant. Okay? The refreshing of the covenant is prophesied of in Isaiah 42. And it says that Yeshua is going to come and magnify the law and make it honorable. So that means that within God's law, there are parts that God... So within God's law, there was parts that was added to God's people because of transgression. And it was added because it was added as a punishment. But God did not take delight. He didn't desire in these parts of the law that were added for punishment. But within the law, baked in with these elements that he didn't desire, were these 2 honorable commandments that he wanted us to focus on and that he did desire. He wanted our attention to be on these 2 commandments. And those 2 commandments are the elevated commandments that Yeshua gives in Matthew 22, and it is to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I've already told you about loving your neighbor as yourself. That's Leviticus 19. Loving God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength is in Deuteronomy 6, right after Deuteronomy 5, where he says, this is the covenant written upon 2 tables of stone, and he added no more. Deuteronomy 6 says, if you will love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you will keep these commandments, the 10 Commandments. So what the Messiah did was he took away the sacrificial law, and this is why you see with the adulterous woman, he didn't stone her for her sin, he rebuked her. Because that's what we do now. Instead of stoning each other and offering animal sacrifices, now we rebuke each other and we hold each other accountable. And we guide each other and exhort each other and rebuke each other so that we can all obey God. That's the whole point of the gospel. God wants his people to obey him, so he has stripped back the parts of the law that were added as punishment. He put all of the punishment on Yeshua, and now Yeshua has guided us and taught us how to obey God. And the way that we obey God is, like I say, by keeping the 10 Commandments and teaching others to do so. Okay? So your best places to start is going to be Deuteronomy 18, Deuteronomy 5, Deuteronomy 6, Leviticus 19, verses 15 through to 18 specifically, because there's some things in Leviticus 19 that, like there are parts of the sacrificial law, the law of sin and death, that you don't need to really focus on. So Leviticus 19, 15 through to 18. Then you want to read 1 John. 1 John tells you everything that you need to know. It's pretty much a summary, just like I gave you. But he says it a lot better than I could. And then you also want to read Romans 10, Isaiah 52, Isaiah 61, and Luke 4. Okay? Now, within those chapters, it's all about the glad tidings and the gospel, and who is going to be preaching the glad tidings, which is the gospel. Okay? The glad tidings is the refreshing of the covenant. The refreshing of the covenant is the gospel. Okay? And the only people in the last generation who are actually speaking the truth are the watchmen raised up, who are the very elect, who are the only ones not deceived, and they have been raised up to preach the refreshing of the covenant. That's me. That's my brothers and sisters. Okay? I say that with boldness because God is giving us the meat and due season, and he tells us to let no man despise your authority. So I know that to most people I probably just sound like an arrogant prick, but I know what God has shown me. I know what God's shown my brothers and sisters, and that's just the way it is. Like, when God shows you something, you're not going to let anyone tell you otherwise, okay? So there you go. That's the best places to start reading. Reach out, DM, we can get on the phone, we can whatever. I'm happy to help.